On this episode of the Sports Opinions podcast, I have another one of the amazing coaches that I used to have back in high school that influenced me, also gave me a chance at coaching for the first time when he let me coach on his football staff. He's Gerard O'Donnell, a math teacher and a coach of 30 plus years at many different places, but his stop right now is Manchester Township High School. We talk a whole bunch of topics. We talk about the Dolphins and the NFL in general with the playoffs. We talk about the sign stealing scandal and the Mets in baseball. And then we talk some Knicks and where they can go as a franchise in order to turn everything around that's going on right there. So without any further ado, enjoy the show. What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions podcast. I'm your host, as always, Alex Cuesta, and with me today is a guy that I mentioned when I had my podcast with my uncle, John Porterways. We mentioned this guy, and when we mentioned him, we both were in agreement that when it came to talking about football, there were very few minds that were as good as his. He's just a beast when it comes to football knowledge and just a bunch of other sports. He is a math teacher and coach for over 30 plus years. I met him at my high school alma mater, Manchester Township High School. Gerard O'Donnell, what's going on, Coach?
Nothing much, Alex. How are you tonight?
Doing really, really, really well. I appreciate you agreeing to come on. I always love having on the people that kind of molded me and turned me into who I am so that the listeners can hear why I got so screwed up.
Yeah, I probably influenced that a little bit.
You definitely had an influence. I'd like to think it was more on the positive side. You gave me my first opportunity to really coach, to be quite honest. I always wanted to coach, and you were kind enough to let me come as some little whatever guy that you used to coach, and let me help you coach the deep backs when I came back out of college. And there were some lessons there just on being a coach that you taught me that I always appreciate.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I remember you getting your start with us. Yeah, it was interesting. I think I learned under some great coaches in my lifetime, and I wanted to give you a little rope, and see how far you could go with it, but I also had to, reel you back in and say, whoa. But I think the concept of being a coach goes with being a teacher. You got to give the kids something. Hopefully they take that and go with it. Solving math problems, man. You show them a way and let them go. Being a coach, I want to make sure that I give you some room to, kind of be successful on your own. Yet, I can evaluate you after a practice and say, hey, work on this tomorrow, or work on that. And then you can also come back to me and say, listen, I think this kid has it and this kid doesn't. And it's a lot easier for me being a head coach, listening to my assistants that way.
Yeah, you were famous for, even when going back to when you were coaching me as a defensive back, when I was safety my senior year, you loved the phrase KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's one of the things that I've taken from you. And I've come back and I've coached track and field over here at Marist, my alma mater, and I've used KISS with these guys, and especially coaching some hurdlers because it's all technique work. And I'll look at them and I'll be like, listen, keep it simple. Stop trying to outthink yourself. And I always go back. I'm like, one of my old football coaches gave me this phrase and it's always stuck with me.
Well, and that's something that, was given to me by, guys I coached with for years. Prior to me becoming a head coach at Manchester, I was an assistant for years at Donovan with my best friend, Tom Farrell.
Yep.
I happened to coach with your uncle.
Yes, you did.
John Porterways, learned a lot from him. He wasn't a little bit older than me, not much, but, and then I got my first shot coaching with John Amabil at Neptune, who you want to talk about, sink or swim. I mean, he told you what to do. And if you didn't do it, well, you heard about it. But if you did it, he appreciated it, but he expected a lot from you, which was great, and that's kind of how I learned. Other guys I coached with, Coach Panicu, he was really good in the sense that he knew how to describe to me exactly what he wanted. So it made it much easier knowing what I was doing, coaching linebackers and then running the defense and things like that.
Now, one thing I have to say, one of my praises I always sang to you, and I mentioned it in the beginning when I introduced you, is I've never talked to anybody, especially on the defensive end of the ball, that knows the technical idiosyncrasies of football more than you. And I grew up talking to my uncle. My uncle loves
Sure.
defense, and he's very good. I always thought that you were kind of wasted at the high school level. I never understood why you didn't go out and possibly try to go coach some college. I know the opportunities are tough, but I feel like you would have been one hell of a college coach. Is that ever something that you ever considered giving that a shot?
Um, yeah, I probably, when I was younger, when I first got started, because my first coaching job was at Raritan High School, and I was teaching at CBA at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget it because I coached freshman football and I had a blast. And I didn't even know the kids. I wasn't there. I wasn't teaching in the building. But every Friday night I went to the Raritan games, and the defensive guy, Joe Barth, he was the defensive coordinator for Raritan. He's the one who got me to believe that there's nothing better than football. I mean, he got me hook, line, and sinker. And I listened to him coach defense. And here's a funny story. Joe Barth was the head coach at Monmouth Regional my senior year of high school, when we had to beat them to make the state playoffs.
And you were a quarterback at the time.
I was a quarterback. And they
very good one, if I might add to everybody.
Well, I was okay. I was all right. There were some very good ones in Ocean County at the time. But Joe Barth was the head coach at Monmouth Regional. And as the season went on, I happened to mention that to him. I said, wait a second. Didn't you coach at Monmouth Regional? He looked at me. He goes, how old are you? Now, this was the fall of 90. So, that was 7 years removed from when I played against him. So it wasn't that bad. But he goes, you were the quarterback? Yeah, because we had a last-minute pass. The article read, a pass and a prayer lifts Monsignor Donovan. And it was a play that we worked on all week, but I literally just threw the ball to a spot. And there were two receivers in the area, and the one kid ran the right route. The other kid was running his route, and the wide receiver caught it, and we actually won the game. But it was really cool because Joe Barth was the guy who first got me into football to really enjoy it. And then when I started teaching at Neptune in 91, Coach Amabile gave me a shot. And, I got to thank him because, I don't know what I would have done. Teaching math is wonderful, but coaching football and teaching math, I mean, that's been my livelihood for 30 years. So.
Yeah, you've had a fun ride. It's kind of, for me, you're living the dream. You're having a great time doing it. I know you love what you do. And, you talking about being a quarterback is a perfect transition into our first actual topic of the night. You are a Dolphins fan, which I don't know if I knew that about you. If I did, I may not have had you on the podcast. Maybe.
Oh, why? Are you a Jets fan?
Yeah, I am. But so this year, the Dolphins, they grabbed Josh Rosen, hopefully thinking that he was, young enough to maybe turn into a guy. They knew the roster wasn't great, but they thought good quarterback play could maybe make this team rise a little. He was god-awful.
Terrible.
And he got a spot on the bench, and his career is more than likely done. Here comes Ryan Fitzmagic, who loves to work his magic on every team where he plays good football for a little, gets a lot of money, and then plays awful. And he's doing it to the Fins.
Yep.
But right now, the Fins are in a spot that Ryan Fitzpatrick does to a lot of teams. He puts them in a situation where he plays well enough to stay with them, but you know you need a young quarterback to replace him. So where are the Dolphins right now in terms of quarterback? Because when he played well, that offense looked decent. There's lots of holes everywhere else.
Right.
But they can play coherent football.
Yeah, sometimes they can. And the thing with Fitzpatrick is, here's a journeyman guy who, if you go back his last 5 years, it's 1 year on, 1 year off, 1 year on, 1 year off. You mentioned it. He plays well enough for the team to think, hey, maybe we have something here, and then the next year it doesn't look good. The guy's 38, 37, 38. I mean, he's done a nice job. He's got a great career. I never liked Josh Rosen out of UCLA.
Nope.
Never liked him.
Not at all.
Who's next? Is there anybody else next? I don't know. The draft is interesting this year. I'm not a Tua fan, and the Dolphins are sitting there. Dolphins have 3 picks in the first round.
That's crazy.
I don't know how. How does a team get 3 picks in the first round? And one has to be a quarterback. Can they be patient enough to see if a quarterback slips? How far does Herbert go?
Yeah, how would you feel about a Herbert? Because he's not as polished
No.
as some of the other guys, but that might fit with a roster that's really not as polished.
Yeah. If the Dolphins could have a running game, I think
they got rid of their big runner with Kenyon Drake.
Right, and which scares me because then Drake goes to Arizona and he's going to make Kyler Murray better because
he helped him.
Yes, he helped him a lot. If they can somehow get a running back, man, I think that would make even Josh Rosen better. Can they wait for Herbert? With 3 picks, will all the quarterbacks be gone? I mean, I don't know. I think next year is the year for the quarterback. When you look at Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, I just don't want to see him take Tua. I mean, I hope the kid's healthy, but I can't see him going from the ankle now to the hip. Is he fragile? I mean,
I just don't trust Bama quarterbacks.
Right.
I don't trust them. I think Nick Saban makes them great, honestly. And if I'm looking at the Dolphins, you have your 3 first-round picks. Like you said, you got to go quarterback. It is a super deep wide receiver draft. And I know you need a running game, but if you can grab a great wide receiver, that's helpful. And that offensive line needs a guy.
Oh, do they ever?
That could be your 3 right there.
Right. They got rid of Tunsil, which I couldn't believe. How about Mike Gesicki? How great has he been for them?
I'm so, and I was excited for his rookie year, but I should have known he was very undersized. He was more of a wide receiver. He put on some meat this year.
And I got to meet him in person. I got to meet him in person this summer. He was down at Southern Regional High School working out with Christian Hackenberg.
That's fantastic.
2 Penn State guys, real friends. And I literally happened to be there running an errand. And I got to meet him. And I told him, I said, a long-time Dolphin fan. And he looked at me. I said, trust me, I've been a fan since you weren't even born or a thought,
Yeah, you mentioned Bob Greasy as one of your favorite guys. If, a lot of people listening here might not be old enough to know who he is either.
we were watching the games yesterday, watching the Chiefs play, and the safety for the Chiefs, Dan Sorensen, had a great game.
Yeah.
And I was with my nephews, and they were, they're diehard Chiefs fans, and my older nephew was screaming his name. And I said, it goes back to one of the best safeties to play on the 1972 Dolphins undefeated team, Jake Scott. I said, now that guy was a safety. And they started laughing. They're like, would you stop telling us how old you are?
How often do you do that to them where you just throw out your random tidbits of football knowledge that you have stored in there that you pull out? You used to pull that out on us. And sometimes in high school, you would mention a player and we'd all look at ourselves and go, who the hell is that?
Right.
He must have been good if OD threw him out.
That guy knows. I don't think that guy knows what he's talking about sometimes. But yeah. No, it's funny because, and like I grew up in the generation where we had teams. You stayed with a team through thick and thin.
Yeah, free agency wasn't really a thing. It was if a guy's contract really expired, okay, then they went on the market. It wasn't demanding anything.
No, and people got, if you did well for the team, you got a raise. You got a contract that, showed you got a raise, and which was awesome. I mean,
the almighty dollar, the TV money and everything has changed everything about all the sports, not just football alone.
That's true.
So I want to get your impression as a quarterback. You played the position. You've coached the position. I've witnessed you turn some guys that shouldn't be good into pretty damn good quarterbacks at times. How do you feel? Did you hear that Josh McCown came in and played that playoff game on a torn hamstring?
Second half, torn hamstring,
kept playing, and he's 38. He's no spring chicken, another journeyman. And I thought he had a pretty damn good game and kept them competitive.
Yeah.
Talk to everybody that maybe doesn't know how difficult what he did was playing the quarterback position.
Well, you got to think about it. It was his plant foot. and everybody talks about the transfer of weight through your hips as a quarterback. That plant foot, oftentimes you're off the ground with your right foot, and it's that plant foot and leg where every muscle in that leg has to be strong. And you're losing that hamstring. Oh, I can't even imagine, and in the NFL, I'm sure you got a cortisone shot or something to help them through that second half. But,
and on top of that, McCown's very fundamental too. His form is very good, so he's relying a lot on that hamstring because that's all hamstring is finish.
Yep, and you know it from track. You know what it's like when you come down on that front foot.
Oh my God, you can't
no
finish. Yeah, nope.
No, and that's even more impressive that they were in that game.
Yeah,
one more stop, and you never know. But that guy had a great deal with Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. He was coaching a high school football team in North Carolina. He would fly home on Fridays.
And let's be honest, he was coaching Carson Wentz as well. And coaching it, he's at a point in his career where he did it with the Jets with Sam Darnold for a year. And if you hear Sam Darnold talk, he said the guy that helped him turn him into a pro was Josh McCown. And, because he taught him how to watch film. He taught him how to do these things from the sideline.
How to
he's
prepare.
Such a cool guy. Right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And, his family bought into it. The fact that he was going to go home and coach football and his kids on Friday nights, and then fly back on Saturday. And I think in the article I read, they were talking about, everything is now done via Huddle, the Huddle app, where you can watch film anywhere. And it's such a great app. I know all high schools are using it.
That's how kids get their film for colleges now, is off the Huddle.
Right. A lot of kids, I remember we were one of the first schools at Manchester to get into it.
When I came back as a coach, we were
doing
it then, yeah.
Yeah, the second year. And now they've gone even more. They're into this Huddle sideline, which in New Jersey, if both teams have Huddle sideline, they can agree to replay scoring, all scoring chances.
Bizarre.
It happened in the Ocean Township Point Borough football game, where the Ocean Township player, 4 seconds left, caught the winning pass. They went to Huddle sideline. They ruled him out of bounds, and they went to Huddle sideline, and they both had it. Both teams had it. That's why they agreed to it. And they found that he was actually in bounds, and Ocean beat Point Borough.
I'm okay with that. I'm not a Point Borough fan, so I'm A-okay with that. So we're going to continue off the Fins. We talked about some other teams in the playoffs. Coach, you've been around longer than I have, but for me in my 31 years of life, this has probably been the most impressive and fun playoffs I've seen in a really long time. A lot of great games. The Super Bowl is decided with the Niners and Chiefs. First, who do you have winning that game? And second, how do you feel about this playoffs? Are you as pumped about them as I am?
I'm going to answer the playoffs first.
Go ahead.
Love them. I think the playoffs have been great. I was, I'm at my nephew's house last night watching the Kansas City. I have to root for Kansas City, but I was so impressed with Vrabel in Tennessee. And then the guy at quarterback, Tannehill, I believe. I think his true color showed. I didn't think he was that impressive at Miami. And when they had to count on him to make a play, he didn't. So, I felt bad for Tennessee because that was a great story. And, Tannehill, who knows what they're going to do? Mariota, their number one pick, sitting on the bench. I can't understand that. Kansas City, I don't know if Lamar Jackson had the best statistical year during the regular season, but can anybody stop Patrick Mahomes? I think he's just playing at a level that is very difficult, to handle.
Came from behind twice, both games.
Right. And listen, I'm a defensive guy. I'm sure Saleh from San Francisco is saying Mahomes, when he runs left. When he throws scrambling to the right. He doesn't throw scrambling left. He runs left. So I'm sure Saleh is going to have something in there that's going to keep him home on the left side, defensive right. And that's, but he's got weapons. There's weapons all over the field. He even got Sammy Watkins involved yesterday.
Yeah,
You
a
know,
lot.
so,
Sammy Watkins is actually a much bigger part than people understand for that team because he takes a lot of pressure off of Hill because he does a
yep,
lot of the same exact things as Hill. He's
right.
just a worse version of him, which isn't a bad thing because
No,
Hill's unbelievable.
he just doesn't have the same speed.
No.
You know, Watkins was fast, and he was, you know, he had a great year with the Rams. You know, but I tell you, I think it's going to be a great game. You know, and you hope it's going to be a great game. You know, you thought that the Rams, Patriots was going to be a great game last year. And then you watch Bill Belichick and his defensive mind, you know, put pressure in Jared Goff's face, you know, and he couldn't move. I think if you pressure Mahomes in his face, he's moving left or right. And if he moves to his right, you better be covering those guys because he's going to hit them. If he moves to his left, you better have somebody sitting there because he can run. And he's good enough to do that.
See, I'm torn because, you know, Pat Mahomes, I like him as a player, but he's not my favorite player, admittedly.
Right.
I like Andy Reid. Andy Reid, he deserves a championship because his biggest knock is he can't get it done when the big game happens. This is his second time going back to the big game, and
right.
I've always respected the guy. But at the same time, I always had a soft spot for the Niners. Grew up when Jerry Rice was the guy. Everyone in my generation loved Jerry Rice and Emmitt Smith. Those are the two guys that you loved.
Sure.
So, you know, I'm very torn because I love the old school running and great defense, but I love Andy Reid. So, you know, I'm kind of down the middle. I think I'm leaning Niners, though. I'm leaning towards the Niners.
Yeah, I'm being an AFC guy, I got to root for the Chiefs. I think I've seen San Francisco win enough, you know, beating my Dolphins. David Woodley at quarterback. Oh, my God. That was terrible. But that's a long time ago.
At least you got there, though. So there's always
true.
that. So we're shifting gears from football. We're going into baseball. You're, you know, again, OD, I don't know if we can ever have you on again. All your favorite teams are not mine. But you're a Mets fan.
But that shows you're a good host.
I do what I can.
You're taking everybody, you know, you're listening to all vantage points.
So, but you're a Mets fan, and recently with the sign stealing with the Astros, and it folds on to the Red Sox, your poor Mets get caught up in it. The Mets honestly had nothing to do with this besides the fact that they hired a manager that was a player and, you know, helped orchestrate it because it came out that this was a player-driven thing. So he definitely helped orchestrate it, but he wasn't coming under penalty. That's Carlos Beltran. Which I think is a mistake. I think the player should have been penalized. What are your feelings on the sign stealing scandal, considering you were a baseball coach? Are you still a baseball coach over at Manchester right now?
No, I'm not. No, I retired my baseball coaching. I am now coaching the golf team.
No, you have it. You have the right idea. Just go get a few strokes off your game. I remember you've been coaching the golf team for a while.
Yes, I have. 12 seasons.
Yeah. So what are your feelings, especially being a former baseball coach and player and all that? How do you feel about what happened with the sign stealing?
I know even in high school baseball, signs, you know, coaches try to steal the other coach's signs.
Yep.
I remember growing up, you know, first name meant fastball, last name meant off speed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so is this something that like baseball is trying to clean up? I mean, baseball has a black mark, you know, from way back when.
Now, is there a difference between the gamesmanship of trying to, you know, someone getting sloppy and not switching up their signs well enough or not coding them well enough, as opposed to setting up a camera and having things on the dot and, you know, and a lot, right. And I hear the nonsense of people going, just because they know what's coming, it doesn't make it. I'm like, you out of your mind? These are major league players. They're the best in the world. If they can eliminate 3 out of the 4 pitches from a guy's repertoire
correct.
And know it's fastball, they don't
right.
need to know location. As long as they know what's coming, the
That's
moment
right.
they see it come from their hands, they know where it's going. They're
right.
that
and
good.
Plus, the amount of video work that's done in this era of baseball.
Yep.
You know, when we think about going to jobs, you know, 9 to 5 or 7 to 3 or 8 to 4, you know, that's their job is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Most of their job once their season starts is video prep. It's not like they're having practices. They play 162 games. How are they going to get a practice? If you ever go to a baseball game, you have to go to watch batting practice.
Yep.
Because that's when you watch guys shag fly balls. You watch infielders get more ground balls. They don't necessarily turn to. Sometimes they'll, screw around and flip it when they're changing batters. But they're always working. So
all technique,
right.
little things.
And what you don't see is behind the scenes stuff of taking the extra swings in the cages underneath.
Yep.
Video room, knowing that there are guys that are hired by these teams like we do for football. For football, we have statisticians,
yep.
But we also have that guy who's inputting all the information into the huddle program. And then all of a sudden you're going, wow, here's a breakdown. 1st down and 10 from the right hash, formation into the field, formation into the boundary. I mean, we have all those things. So baseball, they're doing it. What's the count? First pitch to the batter. What does this pitcher like to throw?
And if there's somebody on, if there's not somebody on,
correct.
If you have a twitch when this happens, and all the little tells that everybody's looking for.
That's exactly. And, you can study film on a pitcher, but, with the rotations now and starting pitchers going 5, maybe 6 innings.
They're not starting pitchers anymore, OD. They don't exist. It doesn't exist. Unless you can go 6 consistently, you're not a starting pitcher. That's a dead thing.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right, Alex. I mean, we're losing it. Yep. We're losing the guy who could go out for 7 innings, possibly 8. I mean, at my era that I grew up in, guys were throwing 8 or 9 innings all the time.
You had Tom Seaver, who would start one game and then close the next. That guy was a monster.
The biggest legs. The biggest legs. And, oh, my God. And his right knee would be all scraped up because that's how low he would get to the ground, throwing and pushing off that rubber.
But anyway, so what's your overall impression? Are you okay with the penalty that Houston got? I think it was too soft, personally. Or do you think, are you on my ends where they should have gotten more? Or are you okay with what baseball did?
I think I'm okay with it because it's the first time that something of this magnitude came down. And when your owner goes out and fires the manager and the GM, after them being suspended for a year, now, who's going to hire those guys?
See, I think in this day and age, in 5 years, everybody. I think they will, because I think Hinch had a good reputation of being a good coach. Right. And I think every owner will look at it and go, I don't care if this guy's a cheater. If he brings me a championship, I'm cool with that. I got all that TV money. I made all those. The money was already made, and I still am having this championship. That's not taken away.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but you go and hire A.J. Hinch. Say somebody hires A.J. Hinch tomorrow. Well, they hire him tomorrow. They're not going to see him for another year.
Yep.
They're not going to see him till 2021. So you can hire the guy, but now you got an interim guy, and that kind of stinks.
Yeah.
You got to put a guy in place that's, basically just, a scapegoat for the year. The poor guy, he's in limbo. What happens if that guy has does a good job with the team? I would love to see Dusty Baker or Buck Showalter get a job with one of these teams. I feel bad for Buck Showalter. That guy did a great job in New York, and
he did a hell of a job in Baltimore for most of his tenure.
Right. In the beginning he did, and then Baltimore just sabotaged him. They didn't go out and get anybody, and you felt bad for him there.
See, Buck, I like. Dusty, if only you can hire him for the regular season and then just have another manager come in for the postseason, because the guy is a hell of a regular season manager. It might be one of the worst postseason or the worst luck. I don't know which one it is, but he cannot coach and win in a postseason. He's a hell of a manager.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know who I understand Beltran. The Mets had to do it because
the image. They couldn't keep him there.
Right. They couldn't. I was not happy about the hiring of Beltran because I'll never forget his at bat against St. Louis when he's taking strike three.
Yeah.
That's just, that image will never go away.
But you know what, though? That aside, he was a hell of a Met.
Oh,
He
no,
was a very good Met.
Yes, he was. He was. But here's a guy who was known as Mr. Clutch, and he gave you nothing. That's what I couldn't handle that.
They're talking potentially Eduardo Perez finished second for him stepping up and possibly becoming the manager. And fans are clamoring for David Wright. Who do you want in
Eduardo
the
Perez.
Right now? You want Eduardo Perez? Sure.
David Wright, I loved him. I loved when he played. I think he left it all out on the field. I liken David Wright to Don Mattingly. Two great players for their clubs. I think Mattingly actually has the better numbers.
Different personalities, 100%.
Right. But both guys, injuries derailed their careers at way too early.
Oh, yeah. They're both all-time greats in terms of talent. That's without a doubt.
And to me, I think David Wright would need to spend some time on the bench as a bench coach.
Yeah.
And really get to know the ins and outs of the game. Look, when I coached baseball, I was very fortunate to have two great young assistants. And the one thing, I always liked having a plan as far as practice goes, whether it's football, basketball, baseball. I think you have to have a plan.
Yep.
Even in golf, we have to, when we're not at the course, you have to have a plan at the driving range. You have to plan at the putting green, chip in.
Without a doubt.
And I was very fortunate when I coached baseball. I had a guy that I worked for who was a National League style guy. Mm-hmm. And back in the day, the National League was about bunting runners over, hitting and running, stealing bases.
All manufacturing.
Right. And in high school baseball, the rule is put the ball in play.
Mm-hmm.
Because 2 out of 3 things are good. And I was very fortunate to coach a team that we worked very hard in practice. The games were easier because we went over situation after situation. And if something came up in a game that we hadn't covered, that's how we handled it with the kids. Hey, that's on us, guys. There's situations in baseball that, you're never going to see. And then all of a sudden they pop up and you're like, wow. And I'll never forget losing to Coach Musoff 3-2 in 9 innings because my third baseman did not tag the bag. He went to tag the runner. If he brought his glove to the bag, the runner would have slid into the glove. It would have been out.
I guarantee Moose never let you live that down.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
If we could put a little recorder on the wall in the coach's office for some of the coaches' conversations that I became privy to for 2 years and change, it was, it was nice, interesting side to see the other side of the coaches.
Yes. Yeah, we are human. We are
human. So I tend to agree with you. I feel like a perfect guy for him to sit and watch would be like a Tito Francona. Or Madden. Those are two guys that I feel are the type of guys that are old timers, but know how to communicate with the young guys. So they still have more of an old timey feel while not being dinosaurs. They're very much like Pete Carroll's of the Major League Baseball.
Right. I love Madden. What he did in Tampa Bay, how he worked with one of the lowest payrolls and got those guys to play hard.
And really with one superstar in Evan Longoria. That's really it.
One guy. Yep. And then when he went to Chicago, and Chicago broke the curse.
Mm-hmm.
What a perfect guy to be there for that. I like Madden and Francona. Listen, I don't think you're wrong, but David Wright needs to sit down with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And watch and learn, because that's the thing. That's the one thing that when I coached with Coach Musoff, we had battled against each other for a number of years. So now here it was, he had a guy on staff who he knew could coach, had been a head coach, and he was great with me because he gave me some freedom. And I said, look, I'm a defensive guy. I said, I understand that, the way I've worked, the way I coached was all around making the play,
Mm-hmm.
but making it because you've practiced it. We've practiced making this play all the time. And he took the offensive side of the baseball game and I took the defensive side of it. And it was really a cool union that we had together. And
Created some pretty good teams too. Some pretty competitive clubs.
Yep. Very competitive. And then when I gave up baseball for golf, he wasn't very happy with me. But that was the first time I think I ever thought about myself in coaching.
Yeah, Coach Musoff doesn't like change.
No. No, he didn't.
Great.
He didn't.
John Musoff is he's a guy that I'm definitely itching to get on this show because I could only imagine we would go for like 9 hours.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's easy. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, he would be a good guy to talk to. You're talking about a guy who coached 3 sports for 35 years.
Brought one of the sports to Manchester Township, an indoor track. It didn't exist until John Musoff did it. So, so we're going to transition. You mentioned learning. We're going to talk about the Knicks because there's a lot of young guys on that team that are doing a lot of learning about the NBA this year and how difficult it is and how tough it is to win. And one of the young guys that unfortunately got the axe was David Fizdale, young in the coaching world.
Right.
I was pretty high on Fizz. I liked Fizz. He didn't work out, and I don't know if he ever is going to be a head coach because it seems like he can't connect with the players. Mike Miller is there now as the interim head coach. He's getting more out of this team, specifically Julius Randle, and I don't know if that's necessarily the guy that the Knicks are looking to get a lot out of. So who is your favorite candidate right now to potentially come in and take over the head coaching position?
Gosh.
There's guys, when everyone wants Van Gundy. There's Jason Kidd out there. There's some decent candidates out there.
I don't know. Would Tyronn Lue be a good fit?
I don't know. Or maybe Mark Jackson. I feel like Mark Jackson's great with working with young guys.
And the thing about Mark Jackson is he's been around.
Yeah.
He's been there. He's done that. He's been in the Garden. He knows what the expectations are.
The Warriors aren't the Warriors without Mark Jackson. He built that franchise up, and then they kind of kicked him to the curb.
Right. And they got some great draft picks, and who knew that Steph Curry was going to be Steph Curry,
and that Klay Thompson was going to be Klay Thompson.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
You kind of knew about Draymond.
Yes. Yeah, he was a dominant piece at a major school.
Right. And Steph you didn't know about, and Klay Thompson you didn't know about. And the nice part about it was they wound up getting guys who became superstars, but they had the role players.
Yep.
They had the guys to do the dirty work.
They turned a former superstar in Iguodala, who was the anchor of the 76ers. After Iverson left. Like, he had one of the biggest tasks that not many people do well, and at replacing a legend. And Iggy did a great job in Philadelphia replacing AI. And then he goes over to the Warriors where he can just kind of put his feet up, play some defense in a league that doesn't allow you to, and just be a role player. And he was great at it.
And not only was he great at it, but I think because of his experience, he made other people better.
Yes.
And, he played with a superstar prior to going to Golden State. So he already knew that.
Yep.
And he knew how to be in his role. And how many big shots did he hit for Golden State?
Big shots and big defense. Like, we talk about Kawhi in the claw. Iguodala was one of the only guys that could play on LeBron and give him trouble. Not stop him, just give him trouble. You don't stop LeBron.
No, no. And I think, when you look at the Knicks, Julius Randle, he's like having a rebirth. He's playing out of his mind this year.
You got to trade him. You got to trade him when you have a chance now. He's playing well.
That's just it. Who really needs him? You start to look around at the NBA, and teams are deep now because guys are better. Basketball players are better.
Yeah.
They're better than they ever were. You look at a guy like Ja Morant. Where the heck did he come from?
See, I like Ja. I talked about Ja last year. I didn't know about him before his freshman year, obviously. But when him and Williamson were coming out, you can go back to the podcast I did, me and David, my brother, do a sideshow called Quest to
nice.
Dose that me and him, we just discussed sports weekly. And we were
cool.
both in agreement that John Morant was going to have a better career in the end than Zion Williamson.
Wow. Well,
so that's our prediction. Yep.
That's big. That's big.
Most of it we attribute to the league and the fact that the league is a guard-driven league, and I see Zion's ceiling being Sean Kemp, which is a absolutely amazing player, but he's not a LeBron James, or John Morant could be a Russell Westbrook type, which is one of the best players in the league.
Sure. I mean, Oscar Robertson was the only guy, that ever had the triple doubles. Magic had some of them.
But for the season, and Russell did it twice. Westbrook did it twice. That's insane. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think R.J. Barrett's a great fit for New York.
Yep.
I think, he's going through some tough times because it's a long season, the NBA. It's so long. It's so much longer than college. These guys have no idea.
30 games to 82. It's a major difference, and maybe 35 or 6 if you go far in the tournament.
Right. Yeah, you're playing almost two and a half times.
So I don't know if RJ is the superstar, though. I think he's a piece. I don't even know if he's a member of a big three. I had trepidations about RJ because when Zion went down at Duke, him and Cam Reddish were both as well highly touted guys, and they shrunk and they struggled and they lost a few games they shouldn't have without Zion there. And that just tells me that if you can't handle yours in college against inferior talent, what are you going to do when everyone is elite?
Right.
It scared me.
Yeah, I think Barrett's going to be okay. When you look at the Knicks drafts for the last, 7 years, 10 years have been horrendous.
Besides Porzingis and maybe RJ and Mitch Robinson and possibly Knox, I really don't know who else has been good.
Yeah. Well, where is Kevin Knox this year? Like, where is he?
It's got to be work off the court because he's decent on the court. It's got to be his ethic off the court that keeps putting him on the bench.
Right. And like Kevin Knox, I mean, when you're playing at Kentucky, you're on national television all the time.
Yeah.
And he was dominant at Kentucky. That's Porzingis. I feel bad because Porzingis, I think, when you look at what he's doing in Dallas now, granted, he's got Luka there, but oh my gosh, Porzingis on this team, that makes a big difference for the Knicks.
Yeah, you notice a lot of Knicks fans that talk trash about Porzingis as he was leaving are pretty silent on him now, kind of ignoring what he's doing over there now. It's Luka. Don't give Porzingis any credit. He's just averaging 21 and 9 a game still, but we're not going to talk about it.
No, and that's the tough part because when you saw him play, you realize, wow, this guy's talented.
He was the unicorn.
But you look at him now, he's bigger. He rehabbed that leg, and he actually got after the weights. He looks better. He actually looks better than he did. I mean, he looked good at the Knicks, man. He was their player. He was their guy. He just didn't have anybody around him.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be as ball dominant with Luka. He can get set up where he's not driving from the arc anymore. So it's not – it's less of a chance of injury. He loves high flying, but if he's doing it from the block or the free throw line instead of the arc, that's a major difference on a 7'3" dude.
That's right. You're right.
So,
and I think.
So what are you seeing? What do the Knicks need to do? Because I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan, and we went through our very low point where we had to build a roster and a team that was attractive to guys to say, like a Kyrie and a KD. That roster is good enough that if we come there, we can compete. And they believe that.
Right.
The Knicks are trying to get there. And it's tough because the Knicks are under more of a microscope. I had on Alan Hahn from ESPN New York not too long ago, and he brought up a perfect example that in the media, Brooklyn being bad or good is a drop in the bucket. New York being bad or good is ticket sales, late night TV, revenue for the league. So they're under a much bigger microscope.
Sure.
How do they turn this around? Because it seems like every time they take a step forward, they go 9 steps back, not even 2.
I think the next coach. Look, everybody. James Dolan is a mess, and I think James Dolan has run the Knicks franchise into the ground, which the NBA can't have. They can't handle that. They can't handle it. I thought Fizdale was actually going to be okay.
Me too.
But I don't know what happened. The coach, get the coach. Go get somebody that, do you bring Pat Riley back for a year?
They're going to bring back Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, jeez. Oh, gosh. Don't say that. Oh, my goodness.
Your heart stopped a little.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if you can get, I don't think Mark Jackson would be a bad thing.
I think Mark is perfect for this franchise and this team because he, like you said, he knows New York. He knows the media. He has the swagger that goes on to his players, and they play with the same swagger. And he's a hell of a coach. People forget he's a hell of a coach.
Right. And I think he never got a fair shake.
Never has. Anywhere he's been.
Right. And I think, my thing is, if they could bring Mark Jackson in and even Tyronn Lue as his assistant, knowing you have another head coach there. I mean, Tyronn Lue, who was he? But he was able to talk to LeBron and get LeBron to get his teammates involved and make them better.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up watching a guy who made everybody around him better, and I grew up when the league was putrid and two guys came out of college after playing in the NCAA championship and basically saved the league, in Bird and Magic, basically saved the league. And then a couple of years later, this dude comes out of North Carolina and you go, what? Who's this guy?
Who got his ass beat for 6 years and got bounced in the playoffs for 6 years, that a lot of people, and I don't want to bring up the LeBron MJ comparison, but everyone talks about how dominant, how MJ never lost in the finals. It took MJ 6 years of getting destroyed to get there.
Right.
So, but you are correct that, it's the generation is tough now because, like you said, the depth of everyone, the bad teams are deep. The bad teams have a superstar, and they also have a hungry young coach. So it's very difficult right now. I agree with you. The Knicks need to start with the coach. Again, I think that I agree with you that Mark Jackson will be good. I'm not as high on Lue as you. I like Jason Kidd because I think what he did with the Bucks, with a young superstar in Giannis Antetokounmpo who was still developing. He wasn't where he was. A young guy like Chris Middleton who was still developing. He's similar to a Mark Jackson situation where he put the Bucks. He's turned that ship from mediocrity to now championship contender, and then they dipped him. But what though, he knew how to work with the young guys. He got good experience. He played in New York. He was a Jersey guy for God knows how long. Familiarity is real. Yep. I think he could be good for the Knicks.
I don't disagree with that. And I think the name. Yeah. I think his name alone should be enough for the Knicks to say, hey, let's start it there. Let's realize this guy is a Knick.
Maybe we can get a recruit or two from him. Maybe we can get a free agent or two just because it's him.
Right, because they've been around with him. And, guys that have played. I would love to see the Knicks be able to bring a big-name guy in. The Nets did it right. They grabbed Kevin Durant, knowing he's sitting out a year. Kyrie, we're seeing that Kyrie might not be as healthy as people think.
The hamstring tonight. Talking about, and today's Monday the 20th, and Kyrie didn't play again. Now, Odie, I'm going out on a limb. I've said it on a bunch of podcasts. I think the Knicks kind of hurt their chances this year, but if they turn it around, if they get the right coach, if they play well next year, if they win 30 games and are competitive next year, wouldn't be surprised if Giannis Antetokounmpo takes his free agency to Manhattan.
Oh, my God.
And that would be the turnaround. And if the Knicks and Nets can get a real rivalry going, along with the Clippers and Lakers having a real one going,
sure,
the NBA's popularity will never be better.
That's right. You're right. Hey, and give credit to the guy who just passed, David Stern. What he did for the NBA was unbelievable. That man knew how to make the almighty dollar, boy.
So you hear that, Adam Silver? Get the fix in. give Giannis extra incentive, get his ass over to Manhattan.
That's it. Oh, that's good. I like that.
All right, OD.
All right, Alex.
That ends this episode. I really appreciate you coming on, my man.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, man. It was a pleasure. It's absolute. You know, we've tried to do this a couple times, but I'm really glad it worked out to do it tonight.
Definitely. Again, he is Gerard O'Donnell. He is a math teacher and a coach of a bevy of sports for over, if there's a high school sport, he's probably coached it for 30 plus years. He's over at my alma mater, Manchester Township. That's how we met. He coached me. He allowed me to coach with him. It was lots of fun. This is normally the time where I give him a chance to give a social media plug, but OD's an old school man. If you want to find Coach OD, go head down to Manchester Township High School, go to a basketball game. He'll be at the scorer's table. He's grumpy-ish, but the most friendly, grumpy-looking guy you will ever see. I think that's a good way to describe you. I'm not going to lie, Coach. Like sometimes you have a grumpy demeanor, but then you smile and you're like, this guy's actually pretty damn nice.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate that.
But again, everyone, I'm Alex Cuesta, the host of Sports Opinions Podcast. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at @A_Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30, Instagram, Sports Opinions 30. Search for us on Facebook, and you can hear this podcast and the others everywhere. Anywhere you can find a podcast, just go search for it. We are there. And again, I really appreciate OD. I appreciate you for coming on. Everyone listening, I appreciate all of you. Everyone, have a good one.